let me take a selfie. Hello?
Hello?
So when I head to the gym, I probably ought to take a selfie because it's so rare, right? Should mark the moment. That phrase, selfie, that's kind of common language now. I mean, think about it. A few years ago, we never said that phrase, but now we know exactly what it means. It means you take a picture of yourself and you mark your moment of your life by wherever you are by the selfie. I heard somebody actually joke that the reason they call it a selfie is because nobody can spell narcissism. And the reality is we've gotten very used to marking the moments of our life with our phone. I actually heard that Disneyland recently banned selfie sticks from the park. People were getting injured by all the sticks waving around in line or walking around. I think somebody even tried to take one on a ride one time. The truth is, we love to mark the moments of our lives wherever we are, and it's become synonymous with this word selfie. Now, I don't know about you, but in our family, I am the designated selfie taker. And when our family gets together for a family photo, I've got to be the one to actually press the button because I have the longer arms. And so we all get in line and we get exactly where we're supposed to be, and then I put the phone out there and inevitably I've done something wrong or I hit the wrong button, or my kids tell me, you got to flip the phone around, Dad, you got to change the angle. My wife has ideas as to how it should be, and I finally hit it, and then of course it's not right. So we got to reset, do it all again. And if you've seen any selfie that our family has sent out, you can probably see the pain in my face. That's just the reality we live with, right? We have to mark the moment of our lives with the selfie. Now, let me ask you this very important question. When somebody takes a picture with you in it, when somebody takes a selfie and you're part of it, what's the first thing you look at when you see that picture? It's you, isn't it? I know it is for me. I don't look at my beautiful wife or my lovely daughters. I look right at me. Are my eyes closed? Am I making a goofy face? Have I covered up my gut? You know, what is it that I look like in that photo? And then if you're at a group photo with a lot of people you don't really know and you see yourself, you tend to do one or two things based upon how that selfie looks. You say either, hey, can we take another one? Or you say, hey, can you send me that? Because you think, that actually turned out well and I'm going to post that as soon as I possibly can. We live in a selfie world. And what's interesting about that is we're often encouraged to do so. You know, we live in a time when there's more of this than ever before. I mean, think about all the workout equipment you can have shipped right to your home, and you can work out in the privacy of your own home with nobody else. And think about all the health clubs and all the gyms and all the memberships you can have. Most of us have a gym membership that we've already forgotten about. And then think about on top of that, all the things you can do to improve yourself, whether it is a life coach or a personal trainer or a health regimen or a self-improvement calendar. There's all kinds of things you can do to increase your self-awareness, your self-ability, and that's just part of living in a selfie world. You know, every year I get a little bit older, I think I should probably spend a little bit more time in places like this. I actually heard a comedian say one time that he's growing hair in weird places, so much so that he's shaving himself like a weightlifter's regiment. Today he's doing neck and back, and tomorrow nose and ears. I can relate. And I think a lot of us can't understand the idea of we get older, we need to take care of ourselves more, and it just kind of creates this perpetual motion of focusing more and more and more on ourselves. Think about the focus we put on ourselves physically speaking. It's like we do a physical selfie, especially at the beginning of the year. We might go to the doctor, we might get a physical, we find out we need to lose 10 pounds or 20 pounds or 30 pounds. Perhaps you decide you need to become a vegan or a vegetarian or go paleo, or maybe you're gonna decide to download a bunch of apps and learn how to get in shape that way. You might pick up a Fitbit and walk 10,000 steps a day. You might decide, I need to go to the dentist. I mean, who knows what the problem might be, and you decide to floss the night before, and then you of course go in there and learn you can't really cram when it comes to flossing, and you leave with bleeding gums, and you think, I should floss more often. And after a while, you've put all this attention on maintaining and taking care of yourself. It's pretty easy to be self-consumed. We also have emotional selfies that we take. Think about the amount of literature you can read on just your own psyche. We do all kinds of deep dives into who we are by studying our family of origin and our anger style and our temperament style, and we go to counselors and psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists and anybody who can help us make sense of who we are mentally. Think about the way we try to look at our personalities as well. Did you know there's over 2,500 personality tests you can take out there? From the Rorschach to the DISC assessment to Myers-Briggs. I mean, it's pretty easy to become self-consumed when it comes to just understanding who you are as yourself. Then there's the financial selfie. I mean, it's no longer just a checking account and a savings account, but now there's all kinds of investments and retirement funds and 403B and 401K, and not to mention C3PO and R2D2. There's just so many different opportunities for you to invest. And because of that, there's all these different things you have to focus on and move your attention to when it comes to your finances, because you're always looking at what's next, how are we going to be able to retire, how do we pay for that, and it becomes easy to become self-consumed. And then after the financial selfie and the emotional selfie and the physical selfie, then you go to church and you get the spiritual selfie. And you learn that there's actually 10 commandments you're supposed to follow, and 9 fruit of the Spirit you're supposed to have, and 2 great commandments Jesus gives us. And then there's the 1 golden rule that we're supposed to abide by. And then there's all the other things that we read about, like go into all the world and preach the gospel, and make sure that you're kind to everybody, and make sure that you give back to others. And oh, by the way, be anxious for nothing. What? And then there's all of the stuff that Christians just do, right? There's all the Bible studies we get into, and all the classes we take, and all the podcasts we listen to, and all the apps that we download, and all the verses we try to memorize, and all the plans we try to complete. And then we constantly are focused on how we're supposed to be a better Christian, a better follower of Jesus, a better husband, a better spouse, a better child, whatever it is. And then we learn that Jesus says, oh, by the way, die to yourself. Does that sound a little strange to anybody else? After all the focus we've put on making ourselves better, Jesus says, oh, by the way, don't think about yourself at all. How in the world are we supposed to do that? So I did all this recently. I got really focused on all those things, trying to make myself better. And in the end, I just became self-hyphenated, self-consumed, self-absorbed, all for the purpose of self-improvement. As a pastor, I typically discourage people from doing that, but I thought, as for me, it might be a good idea because the ends would justify the means. And so I put a lot of attention into becoming a better self, but in the end, I just became more empty. In fact, emptier than ever before. You know, it had been a pretty difficult season for me not long ago, and I began to investigate what the problem was. And it really had a lot to do with unmet expectations. A counselor friend of mine likes to say that expectations are prearranged resentments, and I found that to be true. Resentments towards people that hadn't lived up to what I thought they should do, resentments towards people that hadn't done what they were supposed to do, anxiety about what happened, even frustration with God. I don't know about you, but I find that if God would just do what I tell him to, then everything would work out fine. But it doesn't work that way. And as a result, I found myself in this season of my life where I was really kind of sinking deep, and so I decided to figure out how to fix it. And so I jumped into this very self-focused season of exploration. What's going on with me? It started with meeting with a counselor. I met with him several times for him to just begin to try to piece some things together in my mind. From there, I thought, well, maybe it's beyond his scope and maybe I need medication. So I met with a psychiatrist to figure out if everything was in balance and if I needed some help medically speaking. And then from there, it moved on towards asking other people for help. I began to ask business leaders what they were doing to try to just manage the pace of life for them. I started talking to other church leaders to figure out how they were managing just disappointments and frustrations that would happen to them. I began to listen to podcasts from incredibly successful people. I began to read books from incredibly wise people. I consumed myself with myself. In fact, I even decided to get into shape. I started going to this gym. I started working out more often. I even began to develop a routine of using yoga and some meditation and whatever it took to begin to get my head on straight. I even changed up my diet. I experimented with less carbs and more protein, or maybe bulletproof coffee, or downloading apps, drinking more water, all kinds of different things to manage my calories. And at the end of all of it, I found myself more empty and more confused, but incredibly self-aware. And then I began to wonder, what if the problem isn't found within me? What if the problem is solved outside of me? What if all of this effort to pursue the problem inside of me only led to losing me? Isn't it Jesus who says that when we seek ourselves, we lose ourselves? And that's exactly what I found. My self-hyphenated life led to a lot of self-awareness, but a lot of self-confusion. When you look at the scriptures, you tend to see a lot of things we're supposed to do, things we're supposed to avoid, things we're supposed to start. And inevitably, we begin to personalize those things, and it just gets added to our never-ending to-do list. And when you look at that, you begin to get overwhelmed with all the stuff that you have to do. Well, but when you dig a little bit deeper into the scriptures and begin to figure out what they're actually saying and to whom they're actually saying it, you begin to discover that this whole thing of a Christian life was never meant to be a solo act. Take, for instance, Jesus' most famous message we have recorded, often referred to as the Sermon on the Mount. He's seated on this hillside, his disciples are around him, and all these other people have gathered, and he begins to teach them the most powerful statements ever said, ever recorded. And it's in these commands we begin to unpack exactly Jesus' idea for how this Christian life is to be lived. Matthew 5:14 tells us, "You are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth." We hear those "you" passages and we immediately think, this is a to-do list for me. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. But yet when you dig a little deeper into the original context in which these were said and the actual words being said, you is plural. It would be better translated, you all. Or if you're where I'm from, it would be all y'all. All y'all are the light of the world, which kind of means that that song that a lot of us grew up with, "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine," should be "this little light of ours." That doesn't rhyme anymore, but it's a little bit more accurate. What Jesus is saying is, even in the most difficult of circumstances, the objective for us is not just to check it off our to-do list on our own. The objective is to find the healing and find the cure together. Even in estranged relationships. He says, "You have heard it was said that you should hate your enemy, but actually I tell you to love your enemy." Now think about that in context if he is saying that in terms of plural. You all have heard it said that you should hate your enemy, but I tell you all to love your enemy. What if it's not just all of you individually, but it's all of you collectively? What if the you is we're supposed to do this together? In other words, what Jesus is saying, not just in this passage, but throughout the entire Sermon on the Mount, is the idea of us being able to heal, and us being able to grow, and us being able to forgive, and us being able to not judge, and us being able to pray. It's always done better together. Take a look at what Jesus says in these passages. Matthew chapter 7, verse 7. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. Matthew 21, verse 22. If you believe, you will receive whatever you ask for in prayer. John 14, 13 through 14. And I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Son may bring glory to the Father. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it. John 15, 7. If you remain in me, and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be given you. All of those verses talk about all of us, not just you as an individual. The weight is not on your shoulders to do all these things on your own. Jesus himself lived this out. John tells us that the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, or otherwise stated, moved into the neighborhood. He became one of us to show us how to live this out together, not on our own. Even in the writings of Paul, we read that you are the temple of the Holy Spirit. We've often thought, well, that's just on me, so I should probably take care of myself and watch what I say and watch what I do. And while all those things are true, this is a collective you. This is a all you all. This is the church is supposed to be the temple of the Holy Spirit. In fact, when you look through the writings of Paul, you see him often say things like, you are to demonstrate the fruit of the Spirit. You are to demonstrate the love of Christ. And all of these are not just an individual task that make us feel guilty if we don't do it or feel prideful if we do. They make us lean into each other to be able to do this together. In fact, when you look throughout the New Testament, take away the Gospels, take away some of the pastoral epistles, which are written just to Timothy or to Titus or the book about Philemon. But you get to all the other letters, they're all written to congregations. They're all written to churches. With the exception of a few little snippets in there about this is directly to an individual, all of it is to all of us. In other words, this objective of living the Christian life is not just on our shoulders individually. Maybe that's why we feel so exhausted doing it. Maybe that's why some of us feel like we could never do it, and so we've stayed away. It's because we think it's all on us, when really we're supposed to be doing this together. Not long ago in our life group, we were having a conversation about the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. And every year I look at that list at the beginning of the year and I think, well, which one do I need to work on this year? And inevitably I feel like I fail at that and I'm never good at a few of these, and some come a little bit more natural. And somebody in our life group said, what if it's not so much we're all supposed to have all 9, but it's like the church is the fruit bowl of the Spirit? I thought that is a brilliant insight, because I think about there are sometimes some of us are high in joy and other of us are low in peace. But when we're together, we have a way of rising to the other's ability and others' development of that fruit of the Spirit. That's why being a part of a local church, being in some sort of community is so important, because the fruit of the Spirit, all the things Jesus tells us to do, is not just up to us. It's up to all of us. I think that's why it's so important when Jesus says, whoever seeks to find his life will lose it, but the one who loses his life will find it. It truly is. Fixing me is only done through we. So what are we supposed to do with all these selfies we've taken of ourselves? The physical selfie, the emotional selfie, spiritual selfie, financial selfie. I mean, we get all this information. We've done all these deep dives. Now, what do? I guess we really only have a few options.
Hey there.
Hello, coffee, please.
You got it. I'll be right up. Okay. So what do we do with all this information? There's really only about 3 options that we have. The first one is, here's who I am, so who's like me? It's kind of hard to try to find somebody that exactly fits all the characteristics of all your self-discovery. And for instance, what I discovered about myself is that I am an introverted, intuitive, thinking, judgmental perfectionist that has high HDL, low MDL, a vitamin D deficiency, also somebody that needs to be believing and activating and also exercise in such a way that I'm not so sure if I'm comfortable with. For instance, I'm supposed to be doing 2 minutes of burpees a day and 2 minutes of squats a day and 20 minutes of cardio a day, and on top of all that, floss every day, and on top of all that, save about 50 grand a month for retirement. So if I go through option 1, I got to try to find somebody that's just like me in that area. Who can fit that? No wonder, after all of our self-discovery, we're so self-isolated. I mean, is it any shock to anyone that despite our world being more self-aware than ever before, we're more angry, we're more frustrated, we're more anxiety-ridden, and we're lonelier than ever before? So option 1 really doesn't work. There's no one like me. What about option 2? I mean, option 2 basically says that this is who I am. Thank you. So deal with it. I mean, you're supposed to just figure out who I am, and I'm going to tell you who I am, and so you need to just learn how to roll with it. I'm an introvert, so stop talking to me. I'm a perfectionist, so get things right. I struggle with that, so don't put that in front of me. And so with all of those issues, we become more distant from people, because if we go with option 2, it's pretty clear that no one's going to want to be around us, and we're not going to want to be around anybody either. What if there's actually a third option? In other words, here's who I am, and so I need you. What if all this self-discovery has just led us to a place of knowing how much I need other people in my life, rather than just who you need to be in order to understand me? See, what if my discovery of what an introvert I can be only means I need extroverts around me to help express what I really can't? What if my understanding of what a perfectionist I can be only means I need some carefree spirits around me to help me enjoy life? What if the best version of me is only found with we? You see, option 3 is really where we find life, when we discover that here's who I am, but here's who I need. You know, what if vulnerability is actually the way to self-discovery? What if us actually engaging with others is actually the best way for us to discover who we truly are and to be the best version of ourselves? In the next few weeks, we're going to learn how we can actually be better together. And that by being better together, we're actually able to do the things we could never think we could do on our own. Did you know you can actually connect with God better together? Did you know that you can actually heal and recover from the most difficult pains in your life with others? Did you know that you can actually leave a legacy and develop your family and to move beyond the hurts and the habits and the hang-ups of your life together? We're going to take a look at what Scripture teaches us about how we're made for community and how to do that. Because we is really the best way to become me. You know, I told you about that difficult season of my life I went through when it kind of led to all this self-discovery and study on my own. And during that time, I sat down with a pastor friend of mine who's several years older than I am, and I thought this would be a great chance to learn from his wisdom and his experience. And I began to commiserate with him a little bit about some difficult things in my life and ministry and people that had kind of disappointed me or walked away from me or didn't live up to my expectations for them. And I really just wanted to kind of vent and talk about it, and I'd hoped maybe he'd share, some uplifting words, or maybe give me some pep talk like, hey, buddy, Jesus went to the cross, so get over it. But I got something a little bit more than that. He told me a story. He told me about some lifelong family friends of theirs they'd known for many, many years in their church, and that they'd kind of done ministry together for a great long time. And they had been, sharing family vacations and talking about their lives and raising their kids together. And then out of nowhere, this couple just walked away from them. They said that they no longer wanted to be part of the church and they wanted to go somewhere else, and they ended their friendship. And it was really devastating for this pastor and his family. And I felt kind of bad, because him talking about his misery, I actually felt better about mine. What is it about shared misery that makes misery easier to handle? And at the conclusion of his story, I looked at him and I said, what do you think you've learned from all of that? And he said, well, I'm not sure, other than the fact of, if this story encourages you or other pastors in any way, then it was worth going through. And talk about taking one for the team. And I can't even imagine getting to that kind of conclusion. But he did so, and he was right. As sadistic as it sounds, I actually felt better because of the pain he went through. Now, here's what I've learned about that in my life with everything I go through. When I share my weaknesses or my vulnerability or the difficulties I've been through with somebody else, and then they share theirs, they may think mine's worse than theirs, or I may think theirs is worse than mine. It doesn't matter. Something healing happens in that moment. We recognize we are not alone, that we truly are better together. Now, there are some things you can only do on your own. You can only accept Christ on your own. You can only get baptized on your decision. You can only exercise your spiritual gifts on your own decision. But most of the things in the scriptures, most of the things in the Bible, really are things we do together. Leaving a legacy, raising up great kids, making an impact in this world, doing something that's life-changing, making such a difference that other people watch and are motivated by it. We do those things together. In fact, that deepest, darkest secret in your life that you think nobody else could ever understand, guess what? You heal from that together, because I guarantee somebody else gets it. So over these next few weeks, we're going to journey through this together. And we're not going to just hear a pep talk on how you should spend time with people, because take it from an introvert. I've been in those settings before, and I've done the whole New Year's resolutions of I should have some more friends or invest in more people, or I should do to this activity or go to this particular function. And inevitably I walk away and say, that was pointless. But I think what we need are better skills on how to be better together. And that's what we're going to learn. We're going to learn not just the need to be better together, but how to together better. So what are we talking about?
I